Welcome to Let's Talk Possibility. This evening we are joined by Erik Vermeulen. This show was recorded on the 30th of January 2012. We'll be talking about how you go about building a personal brand and why that makes you stand out in a crowded marketplace. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Let's Talk Possibility, the show where we explore what's possible in the world. I'm Telana Simpson, and I've got Mongezi with me here.
Hi, Mongezi Mtati here.
And today we're looking at what opens up for you when you have a personal brand. And we've invited the international keynote speaker, Erik Vermeulen, into the studio to come share his views. So welcome, Erik.
Right, Telana, thanks very much for the invite. Mongezi, good to be here. Let's rock this.
Yeah. Well, I want to start off by saying I think we live in an age of like personal branding. Everything's about brand me. If you think about like I was thinking the other day, my grandfather, when they went, they got an education, got a job, worked for a brand. Whereas in today's world, it's much more about who are we as individuals, because I think we're competing for less jobs, and there's so much options. We've got to somehow stick out and show ourselves. So we live in an age of branding.
And sometimes it's not even boxed jobs. You know, it's a hybrid of so many jobs that you can apply for at any given time. And I'm finding it's how you stand out from the heap of CVs or resumes on a desk that makes a company not look at those resumes and call a specific person for the job.
So is that what we're calling personal branding, or what do we mean when we talk about...
I think personal branding is who you are. So you're always branding yourself. Whether you're hanging out with friends, or whether you're at varsity, or looking for a job, or working in a corporate, or if you're an entrepreneur, whatever you're doing on a consistent basis, you're branding yourself. I think it's become more important because, as you've already said, the job market is so much more competitive. It's also become so much more important because it's so much easier for people today, for individuals, to brand themselves. You know, our parents or grandparents, they had no way of actively branding themselves other than getting to know the people that they hung out with. And those communities were very small. 15 years ago, in our circle of influence, we had maybe 50 or 60 people that we knew of or who knew of us. Yeah. Today, with social media and the way the world's just opened up,
the globalization,
the average person has just over 200 friends on Facebook. And so there's so much more opportunity for us to communicate. And because of that, there's so much bigger opportunities for us to build a personal brand, or to not build a brand. The point is, whatever we do, we'll build a brand anyway.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned building a brand. Do you then go out to build a brand, or do you do what you do and hope a brand comes out of that?
If you do what you do, a brand will come out of that. Whether that's the brand that you want is not always the same thing.
Yes.
And so whether you're looking for a job, whether you're working in a company, whether you're an entrepreneur, those things that you consistently do end up building your brand. Why is it, for example, that if you meet siblings, a brother and a sister, they grow up in the same social constructs, they go to the same schools, they hang out in the same sort of environments, yet you meet them 5 years later and they've taken completely different career paths. They're completely different people. And it's because of, I suppose, that innate psychology of people will do things that they're consistently rewarded for. And so if I behave in a particular way and I like the reaction I get for that, I continue to behave in that way. And a brand really is just a set of consistent behaviors.
So it's almost like what you get known for. Yeah. So as you said, whether it's within your group of friends or whether in work.
Yeah, like, absolutely.
Telana's known as the quiet one, or not. So you could be branded as the shy one, or the loud one, or the life of the party.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important to note that you don't create that brand. It's the environment within which you function that creates that brand for you.
Is it something you can do intentionally, though?
Of course it is.
And in doing it intentionally, I mean, how would you go about doing it intentionally?
Well, I think the first thing is to just but once you understand that you're already building a brand,
Yes.
if you then want to define a particular brand, then it's a case of finding out what it is that your industry is looking for. It's a case of finding out what it is that will make you unique in your industry. I met a fellow keynote speaker about, 6-8 months ago. We were both speaking at an event. I'd never heard of him. I'd never heard him speak prior to that event. And as a result of that, he sends me the Facebook friend request, etc., etc. So what subsequently happened is I've been almost forced to follow him because I'm a bit of a Facebook slut, I suppose. I'm never going to say no to a friend request. And so what this guy does is he's doing everything the books tell us to do. So he's pumping out article after article after article. He's no doubt doing his research. He's posting it everywhere. He's on the social media, Twitter, Facebook. And so the image he's creating is perfect for the industry that he wants to be in. But when you listen to him speak, he's not a great speaker at all. Yet, the brand that he's building, right, is the one that he wants to build. And so his business is growing, and I suppose there are enough people that would book him once. So some
You've
probably
mentioned,
twice.
you've mentioned quite a number of interesting points for me there. One of them is how this person brands themselves a particular way, yet when they speak, you hear something different.
Yeah.
So I'll use a business brand, for example, as an example. So a business brand goes out and targets certain people, but sometimes doesn't appeal to those people. Is it possible that perhaps the speaker, well branded as they were, probably didn't appeal to you as just you, but they get booked?
Well, I mean, I've seen him subsequently we've shared the stage a couple of times.
Yes.
It could be that, think about it this way. If you're a physician, or if you're a medical student,
yes,
and you go for a romantic dinner with your significant other, and you're holding his or her hand, if it's just a romantic setting, while you're holding their hand, you're probably feeling the softness of their skin, the warmth of their hand. If you're a medical student, however, as you're holding your significant other's hand, you're not thinking about the warmth and the softness of their skin. You're thinking about the anatomy underneath the skin. And so, obviously, the way I would perceive in this example that speaker would be from a different perspective.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
So, but are you not then maybe asking about, because my question I had was, we've been debating this for the last few days, is how genuine is a personal brand? Because if you are just good at something, like your reputation is your brand, you know what I mean? You don't have to do anything, but then consciously going and doing, like you say in this example of this guy, where he's writing articles and he's positioning himself through what he's publishing on the internet as being this thing, but then your experience is it's like the genuineness maybe is not there, or the congruency in.
That's exactly the right word. It just completely lacks congruence. So when you're looking at the longevity of a brand, when there isn't congruence, brand longevity is not great. Think of, who rushed out in the last, I think it was about a year ago, millions of people across the world rushed out and bought a Power Balance bracelet. A plastic bracelet with a hologram on it that was said to alter your your metabolism,
yes,
and all sorts of things. And the company just made billions overnight, and this became a sensation. And of course, it wasn't long when it was found that there really was no research base for it. Even though, these guys were on every major TV network, they're on every major news network defending their brand, despite the fact that there being no physical, no medical evidence, no trials, no studies to support the fact that a hologram on your wrist, improves your life. If that was the case, women would have brilliant lives because they all carry credit cards with holograms on them.
So probably is the example of the placebo effect. But how does it relate now to personal branding?
The way it relates to branding is, Power Balance created a brilliant brand.
Yes.
Right? It sold millions overnight. The moment the authenticity and the congruence was found not to be there, the brand died. They were liquidated a couple of months ago.
But so it goes back to because to me that's what personal branding is it's a demonstration of, or you get known for what you're good at.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, it's the environment you're in kind of naturally brings that out. But I think when Gizi, what I hear you asking is how do we intentionally, if that's naturally what is coming out, but it's not actually how we want to position ourselves.
No.
We want to grow into another area. We want to maybe change careers. Is that not your question, Mongi? How do you change that?
How do you?
but still make it,
if you go out, if you go
Yeah.
out and create a perception, if you go out and a perception automatically gets created around you, and people describe you and define you in a certain way, because one of the points you made was if people consistently and constantly describe you this way,
Yeah.
it automatically tells you what your strengths are or where you should be branding yourself. Yet you probably want to brand yourself somewhere else. So how do you then stop branding yourself this way and brand yourself in a
just
different
simply
way?
go out and do it. As my speaker colleague just went and did it.
Yes.
We all know, if we know what to do and we know what the world in that environment is looking for that we want to move into, and we start giving it that. Right?
Well, you know what to
then
do.
it happens.
What do people do?
Well, I think firstly is the first step is to define who you really are and what it is that makes you unique.
Yes.
There's a lot of marketing speak, I suppose, that would go in there.
That's the $1 million question, though. What am I all about?
How about this for an example? One of my clients wanted to... they've just got a different way of building relationships with their clients. So about 2 years ago, when one of their banking clients had a bit of a bomb scare at their head office, the very next morning, they shipped off to their client, the bank, 20 pairs of boxer shorts to that department with a very simple message saying, you must have shat yourself yesterday. And so here's a gift. Right? That company is known for being a bit off the wall, a bit cutting edge. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I sent a client that I really wanted to work with. A friend of mine had a sports store, and I got from him an arm and a leg from a mannequin, and I boxed it. It was a fairly big box. I couriered it to my client. I said, I will give an arm and a leg for your business. Figure out what it is that makes you unique from everybody else. If you want to go into accounting, right,
yes.
The fact that you're a better accountant than everybody else, how do you prove that, right? I firmly believe that no matter what industry we're in, no matter how analytical or how people-pleasing that industry is, if you can't build relationships, you're just not going to go anywhere. There is hardly a recruitment company today that is not using social media or business media like LinkedIn as part of the recruitment process. And so you need to start becoming aware very quickly that through remaining congruent, as we've already said, but you need to create your online presence, business-wise, particularly on LinkedIn.
So one of the things that keeps coming up is defining yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So you probably would have guessed this question by now. How would you define yourself versus how your clients and audiences would define you? How aligned are those two images?
Are you asking me personally?
Yes, you personally, about your personal brand.
The first clue, I think, is just the About Me page on Facebook.
Yeah, okay.
Everyone can have a look there. It's Erik with a K, Vermeulen. And I've got a paragraph there that, it's really just fun because at heart I'm quite a fun guy. And so it says, I know the exact location of every food item in the supermarket. I can cook 30-minute brownies in 20 minutes. I can tread water for 3 days. On weekends to relax, I practice full contact origami. And it's just a whole bunch of fun stuff. It almost cost me work last year. I got a phone call from Iran, actually saying, Erik, we'd love for you to come and speak at a series of seminars. I said, brilliant, send the contracts. 3 weeks later, I get a phone call, still no contracts, but I get a phone call saying, Erik, I'm sorry, you can't work in Iran because we've heard that you've done covert work with the CIA. And we all know what the political nature is like in Iran at the moment. I said to the guy, listen, where did you hear this? He says, no, someone has found it on your website. So my initial reaction is, listen, there's nothing on my website about doing covert work with the CIA. My reaction is maybe my website's been hacked. I say to them, where on my website? He says he doesn't know. It's a friend who's told him. He'll find out and he'll call me back. An hour later, it's now 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. He phones me back. He says, listen, it's on your Facebook page. And then the penny dropped. In that about me section, I made this flippant comment. I've done covert work with the CIA.
And yet it's a jest because you're finding persona, but
I said to him, read the whole paragraph. He says, I have. I said, it's a parody. It's a joke. He says, I don't understand it. He says, you've done work with the CIA. Anyway, long story short, sorry, Erik, you can't work in Iran. He phones me back 2 weeks later. He says, Erik, could you just remove that sentence? Yeah, done. Okay, great. The contracts are on their way. Right. So 2 things worried me going to Iran. The first is that they haven't got a sense of humor and that I would just completely tank. And the second thing that worried me is that there would probably be a couple of heavy guys waiting for me at the airport. The trip turned out absolutely brilliantly, by the way. But, and so whatever you put out there, somebody will read who you really are.
And they may not understand the context from their
I make a point in all my social media branding to really be who I am. So when I speak, train and consult, I'll put some of that onto social media. When I practice my hobby photography or adventure sport photography, that goes out on social media. When I,
So it's the congruency. So that, but that's going back. So what I hear you saying then to build a personal brand is 1, knowing yourself.
Yeah.
And putting that, being congruent with that. And then 2 is
defining that.
Yeah, so defining it and then sharing that through the different social medias, because that's how we tend today to document our
absolutely. And
our
then leading
brands.
on from that, the third step would then be to leverage it, to leverage who you are. Yeah. I mean, I've got a company, Leader Motivation Systems, but you won't see that brand anywhere anymore. I suppose when we all start companies, we think, one day, I can either sell it for billions, or, we want that rush of having a whole bunch of people working for us. And when I got that, it was kind of not where I wanted to be. And so when I had a couple of people out selling and a couple of people out running my training programs, I ended up sitting in an office, managing the whole thing. And clients started then saying to me, Erik, where were you on Wednesday? I said, and I would respond by, but, I told you from the outset James would be running the program. They said, no, we know that. He did a brilliant job, but where were you? I said, well, I was in the office, or I was out seeing clients. Mm. They said, no, but we really wanted you to be there. Why? No, just to sit in the back of the room. And that kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah.
And so that almost forced me to then start thinking, you know what, people use me for the stuff that I do for a very particular set of reasons. And that is, it's not necessarily the content, and it's not necessarily it's not the brand Leader Motivation Systems. Right, it's not, and it's definitely not the content, because James was running my content. It was about that something else that me being there brings to it. So energy, humor, the stuff that's off content. In other words, anecdotes, stories, experiences, and that eventually just then got me thinking. What's the point of having the company? Because when I'm managing it, I'm not really doing what I love doing, which is being in front of an audience. And so I slowly just scaled it back, and today it's just me again, being in one place at a time and doing what we do.
And so personal branding then works very well for that, because you are your brand, you are your product, even more that. So,
but don't make the mistake of thinking that only works in an entrepreneurial culture. Right.
That's what's going to be my question.
So
what about the accountant?
If you want to grow your career, which everybody does, right, you need to bring that same branding to who you are in the company that you're working in. Why is it that people who start in the same company, in the same position, some people retire in that position, right, while others go on to be, MD, FD, CEO? And it's just simply because of the brand that they build around it. It's because they're prepared to get involved. It's because they're prepared to stick their neck out.
Because that was my question: is what do you decide to brand? I mean, is it your values? Is it your track record, your education, your work history? Like, I worked for 3 years at all these companies. Intentionally, I'm going to stay at this company for 3 years because I want to brand myself as being a loyal worker. So does it go to
and
that
of course,
level?
3 years buys loyalty, yeah.
Well, whatever. But you know what I mean? So what is it that you're branding? Because for you as a speaker, obviously, you're branding that your quirkiness, your fun
thing
attitude.
To brand, the thing to brand, I believe, is results, right? And so, firstly, I think companies hire people who get stuff done. It was never as apparent to me as a couple of years ago when I extended a contract I had with a long-term client to include the training management function within the client. And I got my ex-business partner to kind of just manage that and look after that. It meant that she was in their office 3 mornings a week doing the whole training management function. She got more done in 3 mornings a week than the previous person got done full-time.
What could that have been, though? What could have caused that?
I think it's an employee attitude. I think 95% of people who work in corporate understand that they will work to their salary. And if they're not happy with their salary, come on, who is? You do just enough to not be noticed. It's sort of that
and
whole
to keep the job.
That whole tale of mediocrity. Is as long as we accept mediocrity and as long as the business accepts what people can realistically achieve in a particular length of time, everyone's happy with that. So as long as you do just enough to keep everybody happy, you kind of stay, you'll keep your job. If you want to build a career, though, you need to define your brand as being somebody who is prepared to do extra, who is prepared to grow, who is prepared to go to HR and say, listen, I want to study another degree. Will the company pay for it? It even sometimes means building a brand that says, I don't just conform, and I'm going to ask the tough questions. I find it amazing how so many people in mid-level jobs are afraid to question. Because I think that, if I question, I'm going to upset somebody. Yeah, you might upset somebody, but you're also going to get people thinking differently. And so if everyone keeps thinking the same, there's no way for you to stand out. There's no way for you to build a brand, right? Why do people prefer Pepsi over Coca-Cola? Or Coca-Cola over Pepsi, as the sort of financials will tell you. When research was done around that and people did a blind taste test, in other words, they didn't know what they were drinking, whether it was Coke or Pepsi. The majority of people in that test preferred Pepsi because it was a little bit sweeter. And so Coca-Cola went into a flat panic. And, I think, a lot of people will probably remember, but in the early 1980s, Coca-Cola changed the recipe to Coke and they called it New Coke. And it absolutely tanked. People hated it. The only thing that then saved Coca-Cola was then to go back to the original recipe, which they then rebranded Coca-Cola Classic. And, that literally saved the company. So why did people prefer Pepsi? Well, in the blind taste test, we were only having a little cupful or a mouth or two fulls of Pepsi. Yeah, it does taste better. But people don't buy soft drinks by the cupful. They buy it by the can or by the bottleful. And when you drink a can of Pepsi, that sweet aftertaste becomes just too sweet. So you don't finish the whole can. Whereas Coca-Cola's got that slightly bitter aftertaste. And that's what gets people just taking that very next sip. So before you know it, you've drunk a can or a bottle or another bottle.
So back to branding?
Back to branding. Sometimes the sweet employee is nice to work with, but just doesn't get anywhere because you don't want more of it, right? There's nothing to intrigue you. There's nothing to challenge you, right?
And especially if that's what you're looking for in the position that you're trying to fill.
And I think every company is looking for that, even though a lot of managers won't admit that. Right, we're looking for people who are dynamic. We're looking for people who
go that extra step.
Who will go that extra step.
Extra value.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at my career, I've been in radio. I've lectured at university. I've worked in corporate. I've taught high school. I've had about probably 8 or 9 careers, and it still keeps changing because even though I spend a lot of my time speaking and consulting, and that's the brand I've got, I'm spending a lot more time now doing other things as well.
But So is your brand then consistent though? Like, it's grown through all of that? So there's a theme of you being the fun guy who asks the challenging questions.
The fun guy who asks the tough questions, who won't hesitate to use humour, but who also won't hesitate to tell someone
what's going on.
The plain truth.
Just want to start wrapping up now. Did you have a question?
Yes. Something one could say as well, Erik, is that for you as a speaker, someone who stands in front of crowds and trains people, it's easier for you to brand yourself. It is easy for you to brand yourself because there's this collective perception that you create over and over and over again. But how about someone who is a bank teller sitting at a bank, or an accountant, or a call center agent, taking calls like everybody else? How do they brand themselves? What steps can they take to brand themselves and step out of
the easiest way for the run-of-the-mill employee is to exceed expectations, right? In other words,
and do that consistently.
Yeah, to consistently exceed expectations. Because when you're standing in the checkout at Pick and Pay, what do you expect from the checkout clerk? The gloomy face, and you ask them, do you enjoy your job? They go, yeah, and then I just normally respond with, well, notify your face. Right? But tellers, anybody, particularly in the service industry, anyone who's customer facing, that's really the most amazing opportunity to create your brand, right? Because you just have to do a little bit of stuff slightly differently to stand out. And that's going to get the customers noticing you. It's going to get senior management noticing you, and then things start opening up, and you start looking at more possibilities.
And one of the main things then is what it sounds like about having a personal brand, especially today, because it's much more we're able to do it, is that you stand out, that you get noticed, and then the opportunities come your way. So just in closing, I'd love to ask you, Erik, what has opened up for you? If you could briefly maybe share some of the benefits you've experienced from having developed your own personal brand.
I think firstly, without looking at the sort of business side, because I think that's what everyone's interested in, but the first thing that's happened for me since I just created the brand Erik Vermeulen is just ease of work. Right, I no longer stand in front of the cupboard every morning wondering what I'm going to wear today, because I'm going to put on either a T-shirt or a cotton shirt and a pair of jeans. Right, it's become easier to be authentic. On the Iran trip recently, I did some interviews for TV there, and I wear a leather thong around my neck. They made me take it off. I said to them, "Why? No, in Iranian culture, you're not supposed to do anything to make you look
to don yourself in a way."
I said to them, "And if I had tattoos, would you make me remove those too?" And they kind of didn't know how to how to respond. And so it's just made my job easier. I've lost potential work because of it. At a networking event about 2 years ago, a couple who head up a huge engineering company that I would have loved to do some work with told me that I'm a hippie. Right, because I don't wear suits and ties, and I wear an open neck shirt,
and fit their image of
and I don't fit their image of what a business consultant should be like. Right. So the first thing, it's just made it very easy for me to work. The second thing is it has allowed me to build better relationships, because I no longer have to worry about what I'm saying and how that's fitting my brand. I can just be who I am. I can question and then the third thing is that it's just allowed me to engage with people on all levels. In other words, because I have this confidence and certainty, right? Sometimes I don't have a clue what I'm talking about, but I won't let that on. Right? It's made it easier for people to accept me, and it's made it easier for me to accept them. So I don't take rejection that badly. It's made it easier for me to, as I say, engage on all levels, not just all levels of management, but also all levels of brand building. So whether it's in person at networking events, whether it's online in social media spheres, etc. Three top things it's done for me, and that's it. The fourth one is, obviously there's been a bit more work, and it's been a bit more consistent business. I think a lot of people in my industry the last 3 years have had a really tough time of it. I'm still paying the bills and managing the odd trip away. So
it's worked in your favor.
Absolutely.
There's definitely something to be aware of, that everything we do, we're putting out there, and it is branding us, as you say, from the way you interact with your friends to how you interact at work and what you do and say online.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the easiest way to generate debate online is to just make a statement, put it on Facebook, and wait.
Cool, Erik. If people want to get hold of you, what's your quick way to get hold of you?
Easiest way to get hold of me is to text me, I think, on 083 603 7119.
And that's South Africa.
Yeah, that is South Africa. Website is erikvermeulen.com. That's where it is.
Cool.
There's a full contact form there. But then also, I think for instant kind of connection, feedback, conversation, have a look on Twitter. My handle there is Erik, Erik, M for Michael, Vermeulen. You can find me on Twitter there.
Great, and we got all your details are on our website. And yeah, so I think that's about it. Our next show next week, we are talking about dating in today's world. That should be quite fun.
Well, tomorrow, I'm old and grey, so I'm not going to know anything about that.
Tomorrow is the Let's Talk Sports show. And yeah, if you're listening or watching us, and we'd love for you to add your thoughts and get in touch with us. So you can tweet us on LT Possibility or email us. And all our details are on our webpage. So just search for us and you'll find us.
Okay. Folks, thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you too.
Thank you.